Dear friends, we've been looking at a sutta in the middle-length discourses called the Sixfold Purity, Chabbisodhana Sutta. It's number 112 in the middle-length discourses. And it's also I'm going to be reading from Bhikkhu Analayo's tradition of the Agamas because it is just interesting to me to compare the difference between the two translations. The Bhikkhu has made the claim that they're fully awakened. And then, rather than just praising him, the Buddha recommends that they should be, one would expect that a fully enlightened individual would give. So we talked about the purification in terms of the 5 aggregates and how one looks at the instability and changeability of the unsatisfactoriness of the 5 aggregates. And then we looked at the what's called the 4 ways of expression, which is regarding what is seen, heard, thought about, and sensed. And the lesson there is in the seen is only the seen, in the heard only the heard. And then the question is regarding the 6 senses and the contact arising from that. How would those be seen? And they are seen to, in particular, in connection with delight and desire, to see the end of delighting and desiring in connection with those sense contacts. And then the next one is in accordance with the elements. And the elements are seen in terms of not me, not mine, and not myself. And now comes to the last question that's asked. And this one has got a long answer because the answer is the entire path. The question is, now I'm going to share the screen so that you can read along with me. Venerable friend, knowing and seeing what in regard to this internal body with consciousness and in regard to all external signs has any notion of an I making, and the underlying tendency to conceit been abandoned, is known to have been uprooted, cut off at its root, unable to come to growth again. So the entire of what we're going to discuss in this class, I want you to be thinking about it in terms of how this contributes along this gradual path of training to eradicate the notion of I, this I-making, and this underlying tendency to conceit. The translation in Bhante Sujata's translation is, how does the Venerable know and see? So he has eradicated ego, possessiveness, and the underlying tendency for conceit for this conscious body and all external stimuli. This possessiveness, this I-making, is called ahankara. Ahang is me. Kara is making. So ahankara, making I. So if you wanted to say, I am a bhikkhuni, I could say, ahang bhikkhuni. It means I am a bhikkhuni. And included in that ahang is the I-making. And then the second part is mama kara. So mama means mine. So it is making mine, making something mine. My chair, my cushion, my robe, that's mine. And then the conceit is mana, the Pali word mana, and then anusaya is the underlying tendency. And this is one great big compound word, ahankara, mamankara, mana, anusaya. And we think that the underlying tendency is applying to the whole bunch of it, so it's the tendency for all of it. My hypothesis here is that an ordinary person who was born in this world as a human being has the natural tendency to conceive of the ordinary psychological self in that sense is like, I'm the center of my life. Things belong to me. I mean, at the ultimate level, like my own body, is conceived of as belonging to me. And then this conceit, this subtle conceit, is even after we've given up the ideology of the self, or a theology of the self, or a philosophy that justifies about the importance of having a good self or taking care of oneself, even after we've given up all of those mental systems or fabrications, still at a very bare psychological level, there's that tendency to experience things as being either done by I, or else mine. And as much as we like to be a good Buddhist, if we are honest, those of us who are not yet Arahants probably could admit that that's just the way the mind is. And when we get home, actually for that process to evaporate and to experience the freedom from that process would be such a tremendous transformation from the condition that we've had since we were babies. Now, I'm going to try the version here in the Agamas spells out the gradual training, which in the Wisdom publication is only indicated by a few ellipses. And I think it's very useful to just read through the whole path in the light of what the purpose is, this erasing of this I-making and mind-making. The answer is, first, Venerable Friends, formerly, when I had not gone forth to train in the path, I felt weary of birth, old age, disease and death, sorrow, lamentation, distress, worry, mourning, dejection, grief, wishing to abandon this great mass of dukkha. Having felt this weariness of this misery, I had this reflection. Life in the house is confined, a place full of dust. Going forth to train in the path is like emerging into a great open space. Now for me at home, being chained by such chains, it is not possible to completely manifest for the whole life the pure practice of the holy life. I would rather forsake my wealth, little or much, forsake my relatives, few or many, shave off the beard and hair, don the brown robes, and out of confidence leave the home life, become homeless, and train in the path. At a later time I forsook my wealth, little or much, forsook my relatives, few or many, shaved off beard and hair, donned brown robes, and out of confidence left the home life, became homeless, trained in the path. Having gone forth to train in the path, having forsaken the outward signs of being a family man or a family woman, and received the essentials of monkhood, I practiced the precepts guarding the code of rules. I adopted proper conduct and manners, always fearing the slightest fault, upholding the essentials of training. I'm just going to pause here for a moment, and I want to comfort those who do not see the possibility in this lifetime of entering into the monastic form, and acknowledge that it is possible when for some reason or another the monastic ordination is not available, a person may be able to retire from some or all of the ordinary entanglements of life and live an existence which is close to the existence of a monk. The ownership of, the obligations to one's work and one's family obligations are a kind of like an entanglement. I think we may notice just because of like conditions, like I agreed to take up these responsibilities and it wouldn't be fair to put them down. And so then there is that that burden. But at least when one is coming closer to the end of life, you become able to put down the burdens. And even if you own a certain amount of wealth or property, when a person is coming closer to the end of their life, they will be able to detach the mind from the wealth and property that they own and stop caring about it. But it's very good to contemplate the value in a life which is not entangled in that way with the things that are mine. the things that we own. Any questions or comments about this part? And if not, I'll go ahead. Now comes the section about the precepts. I was aloof from killing, had given up killing, having discarded the sword and club, with a sense of shame and fear of blame, with a mind full of loving kindness and compassion, wishing to benefit all beings, even insects. I purified my mind with regard to killing of living beings. Here the Agama version, the Sanskrit version, differs, or I should say the Chinese version, translated from the original Sanskrit probably. It differs from the Pali version in having this sentence for each part of it about purifying the mind regarding each aspect of ethics. And in addition, for some reason, the Agama version remembers to add insects. In common with the Pali version that we see here, and we also see in several other very important suttas about the gradual path, such as, most importantly, the fruits of recluseship, the description not only in terms of abstaining, but also in terms of positive morality of like the affirmative qualities that are developed, as well as the negative things that are given up. Venerable friends, I was aloof from taking what is not given, had given up taking what is not given, taking something only after it had been given, delighting in taking what is given, always being fond of myself giving in generosity, rejoicing in generosity without stinginess, not expecting a reward. I purified my mind with regard to taking what is not given. So the non-stinginess and generosity are the affirmative side. And of course, there's many subtleties to this in terms of when a person wants something, weaseling or conniving or trying to arrange to manage to get the thing that they want, which nature or the universe may not be prepared to give. So if there's something that's wanted, if it's possible to just kind of make a note, that, like, I could use this, and then if the universe somehow provides something, and it's something that would be useful, then it can be accepted. But if it's not something that is useful, it doesn't have to be accepted. This last winter, I had written down the titles of some books that I was interested in having to read. I couldn't get them in the library, and we didn't have them here. And then this December, that was like 12 months later, somebody asked me if I would like some books, and so I did mention those titles, and so the books came to me. But through that whole time, I was not occupied. I didn't even think about wanting them. I was just being like sort of like available for what's given, which will also be useful. Venerable friends, I was aloof from sexual activity, had given up sexual activity, diligently cultivating the practice of celibacy, energetically practicing this immaculate conduct with unsoiled purity, free from sensual desires, giving up sexual desires. So here's the distinction between sensual desire, I think that's a kama chanda, and then sexual desire as two distinct things, and both to be purified. And then I purified my mind with regard to sexual activity. So in this case, a person whose mind inclines towards love and romance and sex, if they control their behavior and don't do anything inappropriate, or if they've undertaken celibacy, if they preserve their celibacy, that's all are very good, admirable, and to be respected. But then to develop that purity of mind, to be able to find a way so that those thoughts are not entertained and allowed to grow, so that then, especially we feel that the pure and harmless bliss of samadhi is something that is very distractible by the thrill of, I'll say, love and romance. And it's sort of like, it's considered that persons who are developing, who are able to develop good samadhi, have a much easier time of not falling into the trap of sexual longing. And this is sort of like practical in the monastery, because when we are trying to do the training, and especially we have like young people who enter the training, they're only 18 or 19 years old, and the hormones are still going strongly. So if they're able to enjoy the bliss of samadhi, and they've got a kind of a happiness that's not on that treadmill, then the sexual craving is much less likely to be a danger. And likewise, someone who's undertaken the vow of celibacy, who breaks that vow, is likely to create a pretty substantial a disturbance that's quite an impediment to progress in meditation, as well as other aspects of the calm abiding and the happiness. So it's interesting. We're so modest that we skip over this, actually talking about it, but it's a significant factor. Then, friends, I was aloof from false speech, gave up false speech. I spoke the truth, delighting in truth, unshakably established in speaking truth, being completely trustworthy, not deceiving anyone in the world. I purified my mind with regard to false speech. I was aloof from divisive speech and had given up divisive speech, engaging in speech that is not divisive, that does not harm others. I do not tell those what I heard here, out of a wish to harm these, nor did I tell these what I had heard there, out of a wish to harm those. I had the wish to unite those that were divided. Delighting in such union, I did not create factions, did not delight in or praise the forming of factions. I purified my mind with regard to divisive speech. I was aloof from harsh speech, had given up harsh speech, whatever speech there that is rough and rude in tone, offensive sounds that grate on the ear, that people neither enjoy nor desire, speech that causes others suffering and vexation, that does not lead to calmness. Such speech I had given up. And I would include here emotionally agitated speech, because of the nature of emotions in social communication. that emotionally agitated speech is exactly the kind of speech that can create a disturbance in others. But then this whatever speech there is that is clear, peaceful, gentle, beneficial, that is pleasant to the ear, easily enters the mind, that is enjoyable and desirable, that gives others happiness, words endowed with meaning, that do not make others afraid, and that lead to calmness in others. Such speech I spoke. I purified my mind with regard to harsh speech. And I would say that on the emotional spectrum, there are emotions that are soothing, kind, and calming. And when our speech is infused with that, it also can help others to become calmed. I was aloof from frivolous speech, had given up frivolous speech. I spoke at the proper time, speaking what is true, what is Dhamma, what is meaningful, what leads to appeasement, delighting in appeasing litigations. I would teach well and admonish well in accordance with the proper time, in the proper way. I purified my mind with regard to frivolous speech. Then it gets into the section which is equating to right livelihood. This is the right livelihood of a monk. Venerable friends, I was aloof from earning profits, have given up earning profits. I had discarded weights and measures. I did not accept goods on commission. I did not bind people with debts. I did not try to cheat with measures, nor did I deceive others for the sake of some small profit. I purified my mind with regard to earning profits. I was aloof from accepting widows or girls, and had given up accepting widows or girls. I purified my mind with regard to accepting widows or girls. I was aloof from accepting male or female slaves. I'd given up accepting male or female slaves. I purified my mind with regard to accepting male or female slaves. I was aloof from accepting elephants, horses, cows, or sheep, and had given up accepting elephants, horses, cows, or sheep. I purified my mind with regard to accepting them. I was aloof from accepting chickens or swine, and had given up accepting chickens or swine. I purified my mind with regard to accepting chickens or swine. I was aloof from accepting farmlands or marketplaces, had given up accepting farmlands or marketplaces, purified my mind with regard to accepting farmlands or marketplaces. Aloof from accepting uncooked rice, wheat, or legumes. Aloof from alcoholic beverages, had given up alcoholic beverages, purified my mind with regard to alcoholic beverages. Aloof from reclining on high and broad beds, and given up reclining on high and broad beds, purified my mind with regard to high and broad beds. I was aloof from making use of flower gardens, necklaces, perfumes, and cosmetics, had given up making use of flower gardens, necklaces, perfumes, and cosmetics. I purified my mind with regard to them. I was aloof from singing, dancing, acting, and going to see or hear singing, dancing, and acting. I gave up going to see them, purified my mind with regard to them. I was aloof from accepting gold or silver, had given up accepting gold and silver. I was aloof from eating afternoon, and had given up eating afternoon. Always took only a single meal per day, not eating at night, training and eating at the proper time. So, down to here is the middle section of the Eightfold Path, the section which is related to sila, or ethics. We can see that this section is related to the peace of mind and simplicity and lack of burden on the individual who's able to give up these things. And also at the level of establishing the Sangha, as the Buddha did. One difference between our Buddha and some of the previous Buddhas is that the sasana, or the duration of the time that the teachings of our era continued to be remembered, known, and practiced, is longer because the Buddha established a Sangha of bhikkhus and bhikkhunis who are observing the Vinaya. And so these standards are known to the Sangha and also known to the lay people. So the Sangha would not be involved in accepting farms and slaves and elephants and dancing, music, singing shows, etc., all of these different things. And the supporters of the lay community who are supporting the Sangha also know that the Sangha is not accepting these things. And so then they expect that. And then this social expectation combined with community culture, which is held by the monastic community, then makes it all the more simple and possible for us to practice in a way which is only focused on the Dhamma, only focused on bhavana, where the only, aside from our individual practice, that explaining, pointing out, and passing on the teachings of the Buddha in a way which is accurate and not representing the Dhamma properly. That's all we need to be concerned about, because we're not concerned with taking care of the elephants and taking care of the perfume business and taking care of so many other things. I would like to pause here and ask whether anybody can see what's the connection between this morality and being able to let go of the I-making and my-making. Can you see how this is preparing the ground to let go of the habit of the mind and saying, this is mine, or I am this? Okay, Daimon.
I think you've made it clear from the sutta that everything kind of originates with the sense contact with the object. From there, it goes to feeling and the other skandhas, and then results in the I-making. So by stopping things sort of at the origin, that is the sense contact, it makes it certainly more doable, seems to me. My experience is that by sense restraint, I have a lot less I-making that I have to fight off. Thank you.
Yes, that's it exactly. So this is sort of like, it's sort of like the preliminary level, sort of like clearing the underbrush to make room for the internal, more deeper psychological or spiritual work to be able to happen. You have anything to add?
If you have all these possessions, this talking about giving up, accepting all these possessions, and a lot of it has to do with a profession. So you're a householder, and then you have this whole community of servants and livestock and all this kind of thing, and it's a tremendous amount of self that's tied up in all of that. If someone has that, or even being a servant, or being, like your identity is what you have and what you do in the world. So we do have an identity, as you're saying, when you're saying that I a bhikkhuni. that is another. But we're supposed to have very few possessions, and so the I making is, and my making is about all that stuff.
Even for the monastic, there's a constant danger because people are so generous that then it is possible for a monastic individually or as a sangha to become materialistic. And so we need to keep on reminding ourselves. That's one reason why I like the exhortation in this particular version with the emphasis on purifying the mind. So that then if, say, somebody is offering to help with something, just because they offer to help us doesn't mean that we treat them like our employee. Just thinking of them in terms, what a useful person, because they have the skill and they can do this for me, and now they've gotten a job, and then I'm saying, what's wrong with them? They're supposed to be doing their work and they're not doing their work. Something like that, because we have to, as monastics, to expect nothing, and to just it's like I had a friend who was a Zen practitioner, and he said when he went to have a cup of tea, he didn't think about like, what kind of tea do I want, and then rummage around looking for that flavor. Instead, he would open the cupboard and he'd have the thought, let the tea come to me. And somehow, like the right flavor or brand of tea would be the one that would come to hand. And so it's like that we need to cultivate. I'm going to continue reading this. Okay. Having accomplished this noble aggregate of virtue, I further engaged in contentment, taking robes just to cover the body, taking food just to sustain the physical body. Wherever I went, I took robes and bowl with me without concern or longing. Just as a wild goose flies through the air with only its two wings, I was like that. So this attitude of contentment arising from the discipline of morality. So at first it becomes difficult to give up things or to hold on to the morality, to restrain. It's like you've got a wild pony and you're trying to constantly have to check it and hold it back so that it doesn't go the wrong way. That's, when our morality is not established and we've got to use willpower to contain it. But then with the development and the evolution of morality, it becomes like the natural way of living. We experience the gain in terms of the happiness arising from virtue, the beauty and happiness of the simple and virtuous life, and then that becomes natural, and then from there it's arising from that just going to the next level of trying to practice this absolute contentment. In particular, I find the reflection about causation is very useful in terms of contentment, with the idea that all of the previous causes and conditions have led up to supporting what I'm experiencing at this particular moment. So even if I'm experiencing some difficulty, the difficulty is the result, is like a perfect result of the preceding causes and conditions. And so even like if I see like my own weakness or my wild mind is not able to be as good as I want it to be, I'm not able to control my thoughts and so forth like that, then if I just say, well, because of causes and conditions, it's like that, like this right now, and accept the way it is, then miraculously the problems can evaporate and go past. Whereas if I were locked in resistance and resentment against a situation, then the more resistance is giving power to the negativity and to the toxic psychology. Whereas this contentment allows the mind not to be grasping and allow things, just because of impermanence, allow things to pass by. And allows one to be at ease, whether things are, really lovely and nice and unusually delightful or something like that. The mind doesn't become excited. Or if things are difficult or challenging or other inconvenient or awkward or something like that, or even some disaster happens, the mind doesn't get disturbed because of having developed this contentment. Then the next group. This is, by the way, is also parallel to what you see in the Samanyapala Sutta, and also we see these similar pattern as what we're talking about in this section in the parts of the in the Samanyapala Sutta, in the gradual training.
Dantabhumi also has
And Dantabhumi, the grade of the tamed. Venerable friends, having accomplished this noble aggregate of virtue and this supreme contentment, I further guarded the senses, always mindful of stopping thoughts of desire, with clear understanding, successfully guarding the mind through mindfulness and attaining perfection therein, constantly willing to arouse the mind. Thus, on seeing a form with the eye, I did not grasp at its sign, nor did I savor the form. In the Pali version it says, I didn't grasp the sign or become involved in the details.
or signs or features or details.
That is to say, for the sake of restraint, I guarded the eye faculty so that no greed and expectation, sadness, worry, evil, unwholesome phenomena would arise in my mind. For that reason, I guarded the eye faculty. So this very beautiful training is it works actually in two directions. If we have the heedfulness or the diligence to stop the arising of desire with the sense contact, or whenever we're able to become aware that desire or craving has arisen, as soon as we're aware to be able to drop that desire and that craving. And then the way of sort of like reverse engineering it is it could happen that if we failed to guard the senses and then something has triggered the arising of either craving or aversion, and the mind and body together has started to fall into reactivity. If you then review sort of backwards, saying, where did this start from? And then track the contact that happened. So, like somebody frowned at me, and that made me start to feel frightened and worried. Then it was a visible thing, and if I see it as so that was a visible object touching the eye, and that enables me to just be more objective and detached, and to see in review like what happened, in order to be able to walk back and step out of that reactivity. But then ultimately, then to with this, as a result of this training, to be able to disarm that tendency to be reactive to the different kinds of stimuli. Anything to add for that? And regarding the senses?
I always like to add that it's guarding or protecting the mind from being disturbed, because the feeling of desire, it doesn't specifically mention aversion here. Protecting our mind from being rattled or pulled.
Can't hear you. Your mic is coming in and out.
Okay, venerable friends, having accomplished this noble aggregate of virtue, this supreme contentment, and this noble guarding of the senses, I had the clear comprehension when going out or coming in, contemplating and distinguishing well, when bending, stretching, lowering, or lifting up a limb, with orderly manners and appearance, I properly carried the outer robe and the other robes in bowl, when walking, standing, sitting, reclining, when sleeping or awake, talking or keeping silent, I always had clear comprehension. So there's two aspects to this. One aspect is simply the continuity of awareness, that the mind has not become distracted and lost in thought, so that you are doing things, preparing the meal, driving to work, walking for alms, and you couldn't even remember anything that you did because the mind was lost in thought the whole time. So to be present in order to simply know what we are doing. And then furthermore, there's developed in the Visuddhimagga the four aspects that involve the wisdom aspect of this clear comprehension that can be practiced throughout the day. So this is not so much a practice of while sitting on the cushion developing samadhi, but rather outside of the formal meditation sitting all day long, for each action, to be aware of what is the intention Why am I doing this? To be aware of the suitability. In other words, to ask, is it the right time and the right place for this? To be aware of the domain, which means instead of being carried away with external objects, to be aware, directing the awareness inside, that we are examining within ourselves, and then to be aware of non-delusion, which basically is understanding the impermanent, unsatisfactory, and impersonal or selfless aspect of everything that we experience in samsara. So that may seem like very technical and academic to have so many thoughts about every little thing that we do all day long. But if you consider that even like in the 1 minute that it takes, the second hand goes around, then 60 seconds, how many millions of moments can happen in 1 minute? So there actually is enough time in mindfulness to have that kind of a full awareness, to be able to understand all that with wisdom as we go along through the day. And again, so this is like a cumulative, further and further, more refined and complete mental, psychological training that's building up on the just being virtuous with our body and speech, but more and more purification of the mind, and creating the ground or creating the situation that is weakening the possibility for I-making and mind-making. Now you would be ready to practice meditation. So
It's like you're thinking it's a good place to stop too.
I'm going to pause for questions or comments about so far. Okay, Richard.
Thank you, Ayya. Unfortunately, I don't have the text that you're looking at, so the numbering of a similar text is slightly different.
Yeah.
But in Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation of 112, when it gets to this section, it refers you to Sutta 51. So if you look carefully at all these sections, what you're seeing is a Tathagata appears in the world, and a person is fortunate enough to go and hear him, and he becomes convinced by what he has to say. So this is his right understanding. From right understanding, the next section is his right view. So he starts thinking, household life is crowded and dusty. It's a version of right view, right? It's hard to lead this life like this, maybe I should go away. And then eventually he gets to the point where he says, okay, having gone forth the bhikkhu training way of abandoning the killing of living beings, etc., this is right thought. You no longer want to do any of these things. Your mind has changed, radically changed. You don't see any justification for killing or stealing or raping or things like that, right? So then the next section is speech, okay? So you go to right speech. So what you're doing is you're following the Eightfold Path, So from right speech, you go to various kinds of actions. He abstains from injuring seeds and plants. He practicing only eating one part of the day, etc. He doesn't, accept dancing girls or whatever, all these type of things. So this is all right action. Eventually, he becomes content with robes to protect his body, with alms to maintain his stomach, right? So there's actually a sutra where Buddha describes that the highest form of right livelihood is the life of a bhikkhuni or a bhikkhu, okay? And this is the way they live, okay? So now you've gone, from right action to right livelihood. Then, on seeing a form with the eye, he does not grasp its signs and features, since if he left the eye effectively unguarded, evil and wholesome states. So now you're into wholesome and unwholesome. And Buddha says right effort is to distinguish between wholesome and unwholesome, right? Then the next section, he goes down to the mindfulness, as he describes it. He knows all of his movements, and he's coming back and forth, and he's constantly focused, so he's never doing anything outside of his, conscious awareness, right? And then I'm not sure where you ended, but
We're getting close to
then he goes to a secluded resting place to do meditation, right? So now he's come from right mindfulness to right samadhi. So this whole
Yeah.
thing is actually a description of the individual getting inspired by the Tathagata and understanding and now moving forward and through, the Eightfold Path. But there's a little bit of things where it's almost a little out of sequence, but that's because these things are not independent. They kind of intermix and overlap with each other. And it's not like you leave right view behind as you move forward into the other path steps, No, they build. Actually, your right view actually keeps increasing and increasing and increasing and increasing as you go forward, right? Your right thinking increases, everything increases and increases and increases until you attain arahantship. And even as an arahant, you can learn new things. And that's why arahants would go and hear the Buddha speak, and they'd be like totally happy and content and blissful and everything, listening to Buddha or Sariputta or someone, speak on the Dharma, because, arahant simply means that you've broken through the chain of samsara, but it doesn't mean that you can't understand anything in a little more clarity, a little more detail. Anyways, that's just my view, but I think it's worth thinking about when examining this idea. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you, Richard.
Yeah.
That's really amazing. I wouldn't have, but when when you look at it that way, I can see that. Yeah, and then definitely they're continuously building and building and building, but these are like the foundations of each path factor moving along like you're describing. So thank you. That's great.
Corina.
Yes. I was going to say thank you for that one on the section on contentment when you said the reflection of causation, helps you. And I was going to share my own experiences because it's helped me too a lot. I've had a lot of health issues, and I know it's really unhelpful if I start thinking into the future of like what is going to happen to me in the future. But it totally changes everything, and it leads to that, like not feeding the resistance. If I think of, everything that's happening to me now is causes and conditions in the past. And it's sort of like I have to learn from it, but it's just a different relationship. Like my relationship to what's happening now isn't to change it, because the causes and conditions have already made it. So it's sort of like it leads to more acceptance of what's happening now, especially in regards to health issues for me. So I appreciate that. And I got a big tickle because you're so right when you said, or, we've gone through all these different steps. I'm kind of taking count, and I think we're on number 6. I'm not sure. But you're like, now you should be ready to practice meditation. It's like, well, we've done a whole lot of work, and only now we're ready to practice meditation. Usually that's what we start with in the Western culture. And so I've had that sort of change in my perspective over the years, in that sometimes, I would think, oh, I'm doing exercise. That's not that's not meditation. I should be meditating instead. But if I change my perspective and then instead think of how am I leading my life so that everything sort of supports and is conducive for a good meditation or practicing meditation regularly, it changes it differently. I see how, like eating well, of course, speaking well, just kind of everything we've gone through, even like keeping my body as healthy as I can, all those things that don't seem to be directly related to meditation are so much a part of the gradual path. And so, yeah.
Thank you so much for that comment. It does remind me, the very beginning when I first encountered the Buddhist practice, it was so clear that the unskillful ways of acting and thinking that I had at that time caused a difficulty and disturbance that made it difficult to meditate. And so then it was very clear that, like, all day long, I was really trying to protect the meditation hour. I was just guiding myself just not to introduce any new problems or remorse or upset into my mind that were then going to be causing a difficulty. So I was living my life for the purpose of enabling meditation. And then, of course, the opposite was also happening, that the meditation created the possibility for very different insights to emerge in things that one naturally would like to either pick up in one's life, which were helpful, or the things that one wants to let go because they're toxic. And those things, without meditation, those things are not able to be seen necessarily, and so one stays on the habitual pattern. But meditation gives a chance to break that. But it goes both ways. It is definitely true that the entire Eightfold Noble Path supports Samma Samadhi, right samadhi, right meditation. The thing that makes it Samma Samadhi is that it's built up on the rest of the Noble Eightfold Path. And it's also true, as Richard was so beautifully mentioning, that the right view and right thought, especially right view, touches every single one of the other steps. So every step of the way is touched by right view, and that's what makes it the skillful form of that practice.
Anyone in the room here that want to make a comment? Anyone at the Hermitage? Hermitage dwellers?
Okay. I see a comment from Dilshan.
Yeah, may the blessings of the Noble Triple Gem be with you. Thank you, Ayya. Since our topic is about Arahants, and also noble attainments, I wanted to bring up a question that's been reverberating in my mind. So we basically talk about the 4 stages of awakening, right? Sotapanna, Sakrodagami, Anagami, and Arahathood. So that's the school of thought that, one does not necessarily have to sit down and meditate in order to achieve these stages. Listening to Dhamma itself is enough. A good example is Bahaya Daruchiri. Ditte Disamassam Bhavisati, Sute Sutamassam Bhavisati, Mute Mutamassam Bhavisati, Vinyate Vinyatamassam Bhavisati. Those 4 lines, did the job for him. He became an Arahant. And also this minister for the King Kosol, Santisa, he, had this situation where, his favorite, one of his escorts, died, and he went to the Buddha. He uttered a very short passage of Dhamma. He became an Arhat. So that's the logic that they pose. So then there's also this reference to the Buddha's teaching, where he categorizes these noble people into three. They are called, I'm sure you know this, Uggaditanya, Vipatitanya, and Neyya. So Uggaditanya is the person, like Bahir Daruchiri, then, maybe Upatissa, he's, the prince, that is his name, that is Sariputta, Arahat Sariputta, then Upatissa called it, because when they were in their lay lives, they saw this Asaji Arahat, he was, going on a round of arms. He met Asaji, then Yodamma, Hedu Papa, that whole stanza he recited. Upon hearing the first two lines, he became Sotapanna. And these are some examples I'm giving to support, this case I'm bringing. Then, then Vipatitanya people that Buddha says that, what this person goes to Jetavanaram, he listens to a discourse delivered by Buddha. Then on his way back home, he will do Yoniso Manasikara. By the time he reaches home, he will have achieved, one of the post stages of noble awakening. Let's say the stream entry. Then they say Neyya is the person, who doesn't have those skills. They have to work really, really hard, maybe for years. One example I can provide is, Venerable Anand. He had only attained the stream entry level. Until Buddha passed away, he was only a stream enterer. But by the time the first Dharma Sanghayana, when that took place, only he became an Arahant, if my memory serves me right. And then the Arahat Rattapala, it took him 8 years. I can give lots of examples like Tullapantaka, the small monk. His brother Mahapantaka said, "Go home, you can become an Arahat." But then upon, like doing so much practice, taking so much time, he became an Arahat by cogitating on that Rajoharna, teaching that he was given. So my question is, how does this work? Does it go back to the three people the Buddha presented? Or can anyone become a noble person simply by listening to Dhamma? Because these two schools of thought, they both seem right. There are examples, to support the two cases, So I would like to please kindly, share with me your opinion on that. May the blessings of the Noble Tripurjan be with you.
Well, in part, my opinion is that different individuals may need a longer, more difficult path, and for some individuals, the path is very quick. It all depends on causes and conditions. What's happened previously in this lifetime and the previous lifetimes, what kind of paramis we came into the world with. Even were we born at a time when there was a living Sammasambuddha who's available to teach us, or were we born at a different time? So then, rather than being focusing on what I have to do, whether I have to spend a long time or a short time to attain the goal, to simply make the effort according to the Dhamma, according to the teachings. And then it would be like revealed how quickly or how long or with how much difficulty or with how much ease that the awakening can come to be. Even someone like, Bahia was seeking for a long time. He was striving. He was on his own quest. So he had made like so much effort. But the one thing that was missing was having the right view, the insight. And so then the teaching that he heard from the Buddha was just the reagent for the chemical reaction in combination with all of the effort that he'd made over such a long amount of time. The other thing that I would comment is that in the later commentarial traditions, it seems like there was a tendency in the Sangha to make it more and more difficult to become fully awakened. They would add more and more qualifications of things that had to be mastered before one could expect to be fully awakened. And that might be because at that time, without the presence of a Samma Sambuddha, it really was more difficult, and the academic monks and the commentators were perhaps, struggling to understand it. But the main teaching, that the sutta is really the most reliable, and the sutta recommends the Eightfold Noble Path. And so that's the most reliable advice, is to develop the Eightfold Noble Path, which does include Samma Samadhi. So I don't think it would be very logical to try to become enlightened without trying to develop meditation.
Sorry, thank you.
Yeah. And I'm going to go back to sharing. And now we're finally coming to meditation. And this is all the answer to the question about bringing an end to this I-making and mind-making and the underlying tendency to conceit. Having accomplished the noble aggregate of virtue, the supreme knowledge of contentment, the noble guarding of the senses, the clear comprehension when going out and coming in, I stayed alone in a secluded, solitary place, either going to an empty, peaceful place at the foot of a tree, or to a mountain cave, or to a heap of straw, in an open place, or in a forest, or in a cemetery. Having stayed in a solitary place, having gone to this empty, peaceful place, I spread the sitting mat and sat down cross-legged with a straight body and straight mental aspiration, and with mindfulness that was not scattered. I abandoned and removed covetousness with a mind free from agitation. I did not give rise to covetousness with the wish, may I get it, when seeing the wealth of others and their endowment with livelihood. I purified my mind with regard to covetousness. Like this, I abandoned ill will, sloth and torpor, restlessness and worry, doubt, overcoming delusion, free from vacillation with regard to wholesome things. I purified my mind with regard to doubt. So these are the 5 hindrances. When I had abandoned these 5 hindrances, which are blemishes of the mind that weaken wisdom, free from sensual pleasures, free from evil, unwholesome things, that's unwholesome dhammas, unwholesome states of mind, then they practice the jhanas. Now, I just want to comment that elsewhere in the listing of the 5 hindrances of the nivarana, the first hindrance is often or usually listed as kama chanda, which is translated as sensual desire. And in this place, it's translated as covetousness with regard to the world. That's abhijja. We see in many places when they speak about entering into the first jhana, the Pali expression vinaya loke abhijja domanasa, having vinaya, having restrained, loke, in this world, abhijja domanasa, abhijja, covetousness, or you could say longing, and domanasa is grief or mental pain. why is it sometimes used this language for the first hindrance? Well, the commentators say abhijja domanas, loke abhijja domanasa is supposed to, according to the commentators, include all 5 of the hindrances. The phrase is they restrain longing and grief for the world and the unwholesome dhammas. So the whole thing together includes the 5 hindrances. But it just has struck me that we live in the kama loka. We live in the world of sense desire. We live in the world where our natural wiring of an ordinary person is to be reacting to the sense input, especially reacting in terms of the desire for life, or the desire for existence, and also reacting in terms of the pleasure and happiness coming from the senses. And then when you say loke abhijja, the longing in this world, it's this world, the world that we're in, that has got that quality of making it very easy, all too easy, to fall into longing related to the senses, to the kama. And I, in a certain way, just that expression, longing and grief for the world, is such a poignant expression for the situation, like the tragedy, the tragic potential of our human existence to be caught into that trap. And what a miracle it is to be able to step away from that, to have that whole reactivity to fall away. I also have noticed that in this sutta, as in many, many other suttas that describe the gradual training, when they speak of mindfulness, or else just that transition from mindfulness to the first jhana, it's expressed in terms of this abandoning of the 5 hindrances. And probably we learned about the 5 hindrances when we were beginners in Buddhism, but we should not underestimate the significance of that, and to whatever extent that we were plagued by these states in the past, and that now we're able to, at least in our cushion practice, to be able to set those things aside and to have those moments, or that hour, or those hours of true freedom from those being beset with the hindrances. What a tremendous difference from the psychology of an ordinary person it is to be able to go to a space of being away from those things, of being free from those things, that being the ground where wisdom is able to arise. This version sort of like skips right through to the 4 absorptions, the 4 jhanas, without going into them in detail, so I'm not going to go through them in detail here. I know that the time is already over. So I'm going to just read the end, and we may come back next time to discuss, because this last sentence is so rich, but I want you to hear this last sentence. Having obtained a concentration with the mind purified without blemish or affliction, that had become soft and supple, well steadied, attained to imperturbability, I aroused the mind to progress towards knowledge and realization of the destruction of the influxes. That's the destruction of the asavas. So getting the right samadhi, then direct it towards the destruction of the asavas, of the taints, the influxes, and then with the destruction of the asavas, then I knew this is dukkha in accordance with reality. I knew this is the arising of dukkha. I knew this is the cessation of dukkha. I knew this is the path leading to the cessation of dukkha in accordance with reality. I knew these are the influxes. I knew this is the arising of the influxes. I knew this is the cessation of the influxes. I knew this is the path leading to the cessation of the influxes in accordance with reality. I knew like that the mind is liberated from the influx of sensual desire, the taint, I'll say the taint of sensual desire, the taint of being, the taint of ignorance. Being liberated, I knew I was liberated. Knowing in accord with reality, birth is extinguished, the holy life has been established. That which had to be done has been done. There's no further clinging to existence. And so this is the lion's roar of the Arahant, describing the entire path that they took. And, this sutta is kind of saying, if you asked an Arahant how they practiced, they would describe the Eightfold Noble Path and this gradual training, saying this was the practice that they practiced that took them to that state, to the end of the eye-making and the mind-making. If you don't mind staying a little bit longer, I'll take comments, and if you have to go, then I thank you very much for staying this long. I'm going to call on Sheila.
This is beautiful teaching. In the previous two paragraphs, and there was the word reality, and I think it said in accord, this is the reality. And in this case, would reality be the Four Noble Truths? In accordance with reality, I believe that's what it said.
The Pali word is called yatha bhuta, and bhuta in that case is like becoming. And to my understanding, that reality is in particular pointing towards causation, towards the pattern of causation. It's that aspect of it is what's being pointed to. Okay, Damon?
Thank you. This was a real winner, this one, and I do appreciate, along with yours, Richard's mentioning of how it parallels the Eightfold Path. I would not have understood that otherwise. And then also, you said that it is through this sense world which really stands between us and progress, or I should say, our senses. But would you agree also that paradoxically, it's those senses that once we get on the path, it's only by those senses and not without them that are required to progress, because it makes it a lot easier to have eyes to see the Dhamma on the page and ears to hear you teach us. So those five senses come in handy later.
It's the linkage of craving. So if I see something and then with my eye, I grasp onto the thing that I see, or if I see something with the eye and there's a longing to have or a longing to get rid of the thing that I see. It's that grasping or that instability related to craving. That's the thing that needs to be gotten rid of. So in a certain way, I'm importing a modern idea that's not necessarily so much in the suttas, which is kind of like a Darwinian idea that in our psychology that people are sentient beings. The feelings help them to get what they need in order to survive. And it sort of has that function. Otherwise, like, what's the point of having pleasant and unpleasant feelings? Except that it helps you to avoid the things that are going to hurt you and get the things that are going to help you. And so we have become more and more exquisitely wired up to our feelings in order to become more and more exquisitely able to protect our existence. And that protecting our existence, that's the craving and the clinging. So it's a very unique and different and outside of the realm of Darwinian evolution, where that linkage of craving is cut, and it's cut completely. You don't need to have any craving at all in order to be enlightened, and you don't need to have any I making and my making at all in order to be fully enlightened. And so that's how it's a completely different way of being, a way of thinking, a way of knowing. And it's something that perhaps so far we can only imagine what that would be like. But we can see how the tendencies towards craving, grasping, clinging, reacting does become gradually more softer and softer and gentler and weaker and less oppressive or less driving us, less compulsive as we gain a greater and greater measure of freedom with regard in relationship to the natural equipment that we still have in this body together with its senses.
Sadhu.
This may be enough for today. I thank you, everyone, for your patient listening.